Shamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads. Welcome to episode 317 of the GeoGearHeads. I am Chris of the Northwest, and unfortunately, we do not have Daryl W4 with us this evening. Please don't stop the podcast just yet. We are going to continue. We've got some great guests. We're going to talk about 3D printing caches tonight. This is a good show. Now, let me take an opportunity to introduce some of the guests. Let's start with C. Nelson.
Hi, guys.
And we have Mr. Antaeus himself.
Hey, guys. It's great to be back.
Very good. And some say there's a petition to change Leap Day to Land Monkey Day. And others say he can quote every Beatles lyrics, even the unpublished songs. All we know is he's called Land Monkey.
Hey, great to be back here. I am going to just take this moment to say I will be Daryl tonight.
Oh, well, thank you, Daryl.
You're welcome, Chris.
You're the land Daryl.
Yes.
The Daryl Monkey.
Yes, I am the Daryl Monkey tonight.
That means you're going to be full of interesting facts, right?
Oh, I am so full of interest.
All right.
Oh, yeah. They have nothing to do with 3D printing, but I'm full of interest.
I've been caching with him, and he's definitely full of something. Energy. He's definitely full of energy.
Awesome.
Well,
yep. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry, Daryl Monkey. You definitely hit upon it. We're talking about 3D printing tonight. The last time we talked about 3D printing was just about 2 years ago, December 2016. And that was show 259. Wow, we've come a long way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just over a year ago. I'm sorry. Math in my head is not always the sharpest.
The annual 3D printing episode.
I thought it didn't seem like it was that long ago.
Yeah. You know, the older you get, the faster time flies.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And so, you know, we're almost done with 2018 by my standards. Oh, well. Anyway, we also like to get email from our listeners. You could send in any email you want to us, and we're going to read it on the show. Now, we do randomized shows from time to time, and those are great places to be able to stick in little bits and pieces of emails that we get. But if we have an email that fits with the show, say, like what Code Junkie sent in on 3D printing. He says, I know you've done a couple of shows on 3D printing, and I'm curious about the software used to make changes. I recently got a desktop CNC machine, and I'm working through software options and experimenting. I've been able to download numerous 3D files and have tried SketchUp, Tinkercad, and some others that I'm just wondering if I could poll the audience to see who's using what. Also curious to see if anyone is doing CNC versus 3D printing. Wow. I didn't know there were desktop CNC machines. I can tell you that I've used a CNC machine, an industrial one. We had one in college that I did a little programming for a project. So that was quite interesting. But that's not the new CNC machines of today.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few desktop ones on the market now. Something that I definitely want to get into someday. I haven't had any experience with CNC yet, so I'm kind of curious if they use STL and OBJ files like 3D printing does. I assume you can, since he's already said he's been on Tinkercad, things like that. I assume that you can, maybe you import it into some sort of software and it, pops out the G code to do the CNC. Mm-hmm. Now I use for making those changes on my objects, I usually use Tinkercad just because it's so simple. Anybody can get on there and just start playing with it and figure it out. It's really, really easy. I personally do not like SketchUp at all. It's kind of it definitely takes a lot to get into it and learn it.
It is the least intuitive 3D software. Yes.
Interesting. Now, I was just going to jump in and so maybe not everybody knows what CNC is. CNC is computer numeric control.
I thought it was CNC Music Factory from the 90s.
Oh, no.
Everybody dance now. No, not what we're doing?
That's only at the beginning of the show.
Okay.
Great. Now I've got that song stuck in my head. Thank you.
You're welcome. As is every other listener to this podcast.
So CNC can work with some heavy duty materials, not just ABS or PLA plastic. It can work with aluminum, brass, wood. I was thinking steel, but maybe not.
So it's a reduction technology as opposed to 3D printing, which is an additive technology.
Right.
There you go. Yes.
It's like a computer controlled Dremel.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So yeah, you're starting out with like a big block of wood, block of metal, whatever, and then it's taking away to form whatever it is you're creating.
Yep.
Just the way the great artist, makes
Just the
statues.
way- Yeah.
Keep chipping away until you see an elephant.
So, with geocache containers, I don't see CNC as really, the right tool for the job.
Seems like it would be harder to do that, especially things like threading.
Exactly. I just don't see that as a possibility. Maybe it is. Maybe I mean, like I said, I don't have any experience with it, but I just don't think that's something that you're going to be able to do. I mean, you could make nice, I don't know, ammo cans, maybe.
Bison tooth.
I guess you could make a bison tooth, but how do you do that threading though?
Yeah.
Well, you probably would use a tap or something like that.
Right. So it's more than just the CNC. You'd use the CNC and then a tap or, a drill press or something with a tap on it to do the next piece of the work.
Well, you definitely have more detail that you can do with an additive technique like 3D printing.
Now, Chris, you have some ideas of different programs you can use with either CNC or 3D printing.
Well, I use Tinkercad as well. SketchUp is by far the worst. I will echo that one. Fusion 360 is related to Tinkercad. It's the same company, and so, for instance, your Tinkercad login will help you to download Fusion 360. It's more of a standalone program and more of a CAD type program. One thing to know is there are tons of videos on YouTube that will take you through a lot of what you need to learn for these different things. And I actually just I have a newsletter that I get from all3dp or all3dprinting.com. And it has a list of the best 3D printing software, and it has a ton of different programs, and most of them are going to be free. Onshape is another one that a lot of people use.
Blender is pretty popular.
Yeah. Onshape is the only problem with Onshape is unless you pay them, I don't know how much it is a month. It's either $100 or a couple hundred a month. All your designs are public. That's not the case with Tinkercad. So
now, all I've used personally is Cura, however you want to say that, or
Cura is a slicer. It's not a design program.
But you can do some minor things. Duplicate objects. Move them. Yeah. So, but yeah, I've never actually gone through and created an object. I've always just downloaded one. And
in the event that this is maybe the first 3D printing episode someone's listening to, maybe they haven't listened to back episodes of GeoGearHeads for some unknown reason. But we're talking about the software and used for 3D printing. Would you guys be able to maybe just really quickly walk through kind of the workflow of how you get from either no design or a design to actually starting the actual printing?
Well, the easiest way would be to go to
Thingiverse.
And look for geocaches in there, and you'll find a ton of different designs that you can download just as they are. You'll have some software that is recommended for your printer for slicing these objects, and you'll normally have to originally start off with entering the configuration of your device or picking it from a list. When you take that model and drop it in the software, it gives you a desktop view of your print surface, and it allows you to place things, or like Daryl was saying, duplicate them, resize them to fit your printer, and then you create a file. It's called slicing, and basically what slicing does is it layer by layer takes the object that you have apart so that the printer can then put it back together.
I think that's a pretty simple, pretty straightforward layout. Yeah. So I've never, like I say, I've never created an object from scratch. I've always taken something, either modified it or, added something to it, or taken something away and then manipulate it slightly and send it out on the printer.
That's exactly what I do. And Tinkercad is just a great application. Very simple. It's for beginners, and just makes those minor modifications simple to do.
Very cool. Hey, mind if I jump in with a question I had?
Yeah,
please.
So we've talked in the past before about creating geocache containers with 3D printing, and which is, of course, what we're talking about now. And one of the questions I always find really interesting is, what kind of considerations do you guys need to be thinking about when you're planning to make a geocache, a 3D printed geocache container? But what do you need to take into consideration to make sure that it's weatherproof? And I'm thinking, we've talked in the past about sun bleaching and things like that, and the heat of the sun breaking down the plastics. But I'm thinking things like rain, snow, ice, looking at the time of year we're in right now and the way the winter's hitting the south this year.
Yeah. So, being down in the South, I have not really had to deal too much with the cold weather. So snow, ice, freezing temperatures. Recently, however, I have, and I'm sure you guys, you go out caching, you come across like a Tupperware, maybe in the dead of winter when you're popping the lid off. I'm guessing from recent experience that it splits. It may break open or whatever. So it's definitely. I mean, we're talking about plastics. Just like a Tupperware, this PLA, ABS, whatever, it's all plastic. And so they do get weak or weaker in different temperatures. And so every plastic has its own TG, which is the glass transition temperature. So this is where it starts to melt. So that's how you tell your printer to go to a certain temperature. When it gets to that temperature, the filament gets to the point where it melts enough so that you can create your objects. We also have what is known as DBTT, which is the ductile brittle transition temperature. So this is the temperature at which the plastic can get so brittle that it could shatter with minimal impact. And so like I said earlier, every plastic has every type of plastic has different levels at which it will hit its DBTT. So like ABS, What is ABS? ABS is somewhere around 13 to 40 degrees below Fahrenheit. So at that point, you drop it on the ground, it can very well shatter. So it doesn't get that cold up there, does it? Negative 13
Maybe
degrees
Canada.
Fahrenheit.
That would be negative
That's 25
to 40 Celsius.
Right.
When you figure in wind chills and things like that,
Yeah.
So for anybody who has never seen it, this is what filament looks like right here. And it comes on spools like so, and that's how you feed your printer. I had started using, when I started out, I was using PLA, which is the easiest plastic to print. And one thing I found about PLA is that it's not very stable as far as temperature. I had something that I had printed in my car to hold my phone, and we actually went down to Fort Worth, Texas to visit some family, and it just collapsed. I know Jeff paints his with paints that help to take care of the UV exposure and the water and that type of stuff. But I've just found that using ABS or PETG is a better, it's just easier. ABS is something that is used all over the place. It's the same kind of plastic that a lot of the things that you probably have at home have in them, because it's an injected molded. It's used for injection molding, and it's a strong but fairly flexible plastic as well. So it actually works fairly well for geocaches.
Yeah. So the glass transition point for ABS is higher than PLA. So
like 120 degrees Celsius.
Right. Actually, it's higher than that, isn't it? Well, I'm thinking Fahrenheit. I'm sorry. So
Celsius is pretty hot.
Yeah, that's like 270 something, I think.
So the range for ABS is 176 degrees Fahrenheit to 257. So that's the point at which it melts. So I'm going to talk in Fahrenheit because that's what I'm used to. So with PLA, however, it's at like 135, 140. That's the point at which it melts. So when you're in Fort Worth and you're in the dead of summer and you got something in your car, the car can heat up to 130 plus degrees. So
especially if it's got a black interior.
Oh yeah. So PLA, especially if you have some thin parts, on your object, it's going to become malleable. It's going to like sag. It's going to get soft and it's going to deform basically. So ABS.
You're saying you're PLA?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and heat. Yes.
So, guys, do I understand correctly that ABS is better for hot temperatures, whereas PLA is better for cold temperatures?
No. So ABS is also more resistant to cold, not by a lot, but it is. I mean, we're talking maybe 10 to 20 degrees difference.
That can be a big difference.
Yeah. Down here, it's really not that much of an issue when you're talking about the cold. Now, the heat, on the other hand, of course, if you leave a cache in your car in the summer, it's gonna get messed up. A PLA printed one. Right. ABS, on the other hand, probably would be just fine.
Okay. So it sounds like the answer to my question is generally print in ABS if you're going to use it for a geocache. And then I would think, you talked earlier, Chris Nelson, you talked earlier about some of the stuff Jeff does, like painting with special paints. Is there like a sealant or something that you can use on these?
I do. I use Krylon Crystal Clear. So So the thing about PLA is that it's a bioplastic. So, it's made from what, corn.
Yeah, it's corn based.
Yeah. So it's being plastic. It means that it's also going to be able to absorb water. So we don't want that because we don't want our logs to get all wet. So what I do is I paint it and then I seal it with that Krylon Crystal Clear, which is a waterproof or weatherproof coating. And that usually does the trick. I've actually never had a PLA object that I've painted and sealed, or just sealed, get messed up, get brittle, deform, as long as it's out in the wild. If it's in my car, that's another matter. I had the Starship Enterprise, and I made it into a cache. And so the two engines, thrusters, whatever they are, on the back, they kind of just warped and fell down and eventually snapped off because it took too long for me to go and hide it.
Interesting. So so PLA plastic has a lower melting point, and a higher freezing point. Right?
A higher, it'll get fragile.
Fragile, yeah, that's right. Not quite freezing point, but the brittle transition temperature. Yeah.
PETG is another one, and it's actually my favorite. If I could do a better job of printing with it, it's the same material that most of the bottled water you see comes in, and you know how those bottles, you can't, no matter how hard you try, it's almost impossible to pop them open. And it's obviously, since it's carrying water, it's definitely waterproof. So.
Now, do you need a special printer or a modification to any of the standard printers to be able to print? All the standard printers are going to print PLA. Do you need anything to do ABS or PETG?
They're higher temperature, so the PLA prints at about 200 degrees Celsius, which is somewhere short of 400 degrees. ABS prints at about 240, and PETG prints around between 230 and 250. And polycarbonate, I got some polycarbonate to print with, and that prints at around between 290 and 300 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so you're going to have to know if the printer you're working with can even reach these temperatures.
Right. Normally in the specifications of the printer, you'll find that most of the printers out there will at least do the 230, 240 range. There are very few printers that are PLA only.
Okay. Now, I know when you're doing PLA, if there's any odor, any aroma, it kind of smells a bit like popcorn.
Yes.
Because it is a corn-based product being heated. With the ABS and PETG, don't you have to have it well ventilated?
You're supposed to. There's more particulates with ABS. PETG really doesn't have much odor at all. And that's actually one of the things that's really nice about it. It doesn't warp also like ABS. ABS being an injection molding plastic, it has a tendency to shrink, which makes it perfect for popping out of molds. And what will happen with ABS is a lot of times you'll have it basically edges will lift off off of the bed.
Mm-hmm.
So of the three, if you can get the settings right for PETG, I can't tell you how long trying to get the settings right for PETG, like half a roll worth. On one of the models, the one that I dropped into the chat, that model, I actually printed that, or tried to print it several times in PETG, and just could not get it to work.
Right.
Interesting.
Here, I'll drop it into the chat for the listeners here. That over there. Let's see if I have permission to do that. Anyways, while I'm working on
so as I've said before, and I think our panel will agree, a lot of 3D printing is trial and error. Knowing what your printer will do, setting proper temperatures for the medium in which you're trying to print with, the material you're trying to print with, knowing if you needed a heated bed or not, all sorts of different things.
Yeah, it's a process. I just got a new printer the 18th of December or so, and after having my old printer for 2 years, there's a lot of learning to do.
I kind of hoped after 2 years it would just be routine. You can just start cranking pieces out all the time with little to no thought.
Yeah, there's always something that's going to be a little bit different, though.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go. So, guys, here's a question for our listeners who maybe don't have a 3D printer, but they know somebody who has a 3D printer. So, if you want your friend who has a 3D printer to make a cache container for you, what should you do to make this request as simple as possible? So, somebody comes up to Chris or Jeff and says, "Hey, I was wondering if you could make a cache container for me." What kind of things can they bring to that conversation and prepare in advance to make life as simple as possible for that? And here's the important caveat. What's your favorite compensation or bribe in order to actually do the work?
Beer and wine.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks.
I hate to let this out, but it's what you're, other than time, with the printer doing all the work, there's very little cost to this.
Right.
It's probably 15 or 20 cents worth of plastic for a cache, and it's just basically the time.
But it's the investment in getting the equipment and the investment of time and learning how to use the equipment properly, right? It sounds like this is not something you just pick up and do.
Whenever I create a container for like local geocachers, I say I either give it to them without charging them, or just cost. I mean, if it's a bigger print, I just want to be able to get more filament. I mean, that's what it's all about, just printing more and more.
Yeah, here's some filament.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, see, that makes us all jealous. If you're just listening to the podcast, filament is about the diameter of string, comes in 500,000 foot reels, and Chris just happens to have a bar over his 3D printer with, I don't know, what is that, a dozen different filaments up there?
3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and then I've got 2 or 3 rolls sitting on the floor. I need to make it bigger.
Colors, different materials that you can quickly load into the printer and start your jobs.
Nice.
So to get back to the original question, Land Monkey. So if somebody's coming to me and they would like me to print a container for them, hopefully they already have an idea of what they're interested in. And if they do, it would be great if they went out to thingiverse.com and looked to see if there was already a container out there, that exists. And if not, maybe an object similar to what they're looking for that can be modified to fit, into a cache container, or to be made into a cache container, I should say. So going out and looking on Thingiverse for something you would want, I think that would be a huge help.
Yeah, that's definitely the best starting place is, hey, I was already out looking on Thingiverse. I found this particular model, this 3D model. I would love to have it printed, but I don't have a 3D printer. Can I bribe you to do it?
I don't know. Actually, I've burned days on Thingiverse just browsing.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So actually, I think it was either after the last show or just shooting emails back and forth about 3D printing stuff. C. Nelson and he suggested that we make a Pinecone cache. So I just went out to Thingiverse, found somebody who had scanned a pine cone, and then took it, and both of us worked on it and got it into a container. You can see it here.
Wow, that's amazing.
Let's see. That looks really good.
Oh yeah, and if you zip tie it to the end of the branch, you know, just right in there, tucked underneath, oh, it's so perfect.
So yeah, for our listeners who maybe can't see the video here, that's amazing. Antaeus was holding up a plastic pine cone that is painted brown, and obviously, I would imagine Krylon sealed. It looks like a pine cone in his hand, and then you did the amazing trick of turning it around and unscrewing the end.
Yeah,
because you can do that with any pine cone.
Yeah,
once.
And you know what though, great idea, and I wish there were more pine trees in this area, because I've only found two areas with pine trees that have pine cones, and they have caches there already, so I can't hide this guy. I need to find.
Well, Antaeus, you know, I don't know if you know this, but the Northwest
yeah,
is thousands of pine trees. We have a pine tree on every corner. So if you needed somebody to test out your cache, we could do that for you.
All right.
There are actually some already out there. You know that?
No, I haven't come across.
Goblin Dust has some.
Does
he really?
I sent him some.
Oh, okay. Nice. There you go. You can go find them.
Well,
that was a C. Nelson and Antaeus collaboration.
Now, is that model on Thingiverse for our listeners to be able to go and find?
It is. I will put it in the show notes and in the chat.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, Antaeus. Well, nice work, you guys. Nice partnership. That is an amazing cache.
Okay, I have to ask something. I know there are wood infused PLA filaments. Would that help make this pine cone look any more realistic?
Well, the problem with it is if you print it in wood infused PLA, especially, it is so susceptible to moisture.
Okay.
So, and the sealer that you use is a glossy, isn't it?
Yeah, Jeff? It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would really make that pine cone shine. So.
Oh, that's a bummer. Okay.
I haven't put this one up on Thingiverse yet, and I don't know if I showed it to you or not, Jeff.
Oh, hold on.
It's disturbingly real.
Let me see it again.
A real crappy cache.
Oh, nice.
So for
you know what? I actually had somebody ask me about making one similar to that. So yeah, put it up on Thingiverse so I can grab it.
I will.
So
you might have. The only thing is, you might have to adjust the hole for the DNA tube. I've got these screw top DNA tubes that have a little. I guess put that in there.
Yeah.
They've got a washer or they've got the little rubber seal, so they don't leak. So even if it's sitting down in the snow, I actually even put a little place where you can tether it to where right here, so you can tether it so that animals won't carry it off or that type of thing.
So again, for our listeners who maybe you're listening to the podcast and you can't see exactly what Mr. Nelson was holding up there, that was a classic shape of how do I say this and not
poo.
Change the rating on poo.
Plastic poo.
So it was highly realistic, and it's a really good job. Again, a cache people won't want to touch.
There you go. Hopefully. Yeah.
Actually, the interesting thing was just like Antaeus, I grabbed the poop part of it off of Thingiverse because somebody had already made that model, and then I just pushed in the spots that I need to for the DNA tube and the basically the lanyard spot.
Okay, I gotta know. Did they scan that?
I don't know.
How did they make it?
They had like 3 or 4 different poops.
Oh man.
Yeah, so this was the one I grabbed, but there was like 3 or more of them, different looking than this one. This one looked the most realistic to me.
Honey, I got to go spend $500 on a 3D printer. Oh, why? Because I'm going to make poop.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to scan that in or just, freehand it and hope it's good enough. We do have a question, and we'll kind of use this as a wrap from Bounce asking what 3D printers you're using. So, Chris, can we start with you?
I've actually got right over here a Prusa MK3. It's actually was released, or they announced it in September, and I was probably in the first 1,000 or so of these printers. It's supposed to be the best. It's rated the best by Make Magazine, and has actually its predecessors were the best for like the past 3 years or so.
Wow.
It does amazing detail, and it is. I saw this. For those of you who have 3D printers, I saw a little graphic that one of those meme things, and it shows a little kid walking away from a big explosion, and it says something about when you don't even watch the first layer go down. So yeah, it's a super good printer.
Antaeus, what are you using?
I am still using my Megabot Replicator 2, a PLA only, unless I modify it, which I intended to do that, but I've had some things in my life that have kind of put everything on the back burner. I have a 3-month-old boy now.
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. So I have not done any modifications to my printer. And at this point, I might as well get a new printer. It's years old.
Mine is also quite old. I have a Monoprice Mini, and it's been a good little printer. I think it can do ABS. I've never tried. I've just been happy with PLA.
Yeah, I think it can.
Yeah. So, for the few things I do, it's a fun little hobby printer. It's by no means a, high quality production printer, but it does what I want it to do.
Very cool.
So, okay. One more question. How long, Bounce wants to know, how long did it take to print the poop?
Well, I just printed a whole plate of them, so 6 of them, and that took 17 hours. It seems like around 2 or 3 for one sounds about right. I'm thinking of putting out a crappy trail.
Very nice.
Lots of those around. That's
awesome.
So 3D printing isn't necessarily fast, but it gives you a cache container that is unique or repeatable if you want it to do it in a 6 cache trail like that. That not everybody's going to have. So you can put it out there. You can theme your cache page around the container.
One of the nice things is you can actually take a look at a place and what would fit there and make it. Here's a little letterbox I have.
That looks like a plastic bolt.
Where is the stand?
Right there. See the letter L?
So you unscrewed one end, and there's a nub there with I want to say a carved letter L, but a 3D printed letter L there. Yep.
And then this is the container, and the log. I can't get it to point at the camera. There you go. The log, it's hollow most of the way, so that the log can sit a little bit farther back.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So the premise would be people would need to bring their own ink pad, but very cool.
Well, you're in Canada. You have to for a letterbox. You can't put an ink pad in a cache up there, can you?
They don't really last. No.
Same down in Texas. It would get too hot for the ink pad to last any length of time.
There you go. Very cool. Well, that is really neat stuff. Guys, thank you so much for joining Chris and I on GeoGearHeads tonight. It's been great to have both of you back and share some of these amazing insights and cool things that you guys have done.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, definitely cool stuff. Thank you so much. You know, Daryl does great work planning these shows. Land Monkey, why don't you give us an example of some of the shows coming up that people are going to want to listen to the GeoGearHeads for?
Well, people want to listen to the GeoGearHeads just because Daryl and Chris of the Northwest are on there. But, beyond just those two guys, what you can listen to February 1st, next episode coming up. I can't believe it's February 1st already. Anyways, GeoGearHeads 318 is going to be the second show on streaking. Well, that could change the rating of the show. That's awesome. All right. A week after
we're
that.
actually talking about cash fines.
Oh,
I'm just stating that in case somebody's getting excited for no reason.
I suddenly lost a lot of interest in that episode. Okay. February 8th, 319 is going to be, these are great puzzles. So that's episode 7 on puzzles. That'll be great. We love getting more tips and tricks on solving puzzles because I suck at solving puzzles.
Are you guys going to have Cully Long?
This is going to be Jennifer from Team AJK, I believe.
Nice. Very cool.
She's amazing.
Yep. February 15th, GeoGearHeads 320 will be a randomize episode. Randomize Lixv. All right. February 22nd is episode 321, and that will be all about mega and giga events. That's the second time you guys will be talking about that.
That's right. Upcoming mega and giga events nearby.
Ooh.
But folks, we want to make sure you check out the Cachamaniacs page at cachamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing GeoGearHeads at cachamaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachamaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachamaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show's copyright 2018 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.